Alright, we're going to add to the other video here. Right now what we're going to do is we're going to go through some clutch piston options. I'm going to kind of cover both the forward and the direct pistons here just to show you, because some of them interchange and some of them don't. What we got here, we're going to start with the most common one, and that would be the stamped steel piston. The stamped steel piston basically looks like this. Tack welded there. You're going to check, you're basically going to look at it, you know, from like at that angle, and then just try to see if it's crowned in. These things like to shoot the center out and turn into a bellville, for lack of a better word. And what they'll do is that they'll take something like this and they'll just bust it all to hell, because when that bellvilles, then it pushes the whole clutch pack out and it busts this all to shit. Now there's one that's all burned up, as an example. This is a burned up one. This is one that ain't too bad, just as a comparison. So there's all the stamped steel pistons are pretty much the same. You have different options as far as the rings. Now the common one for a 5-disc clutch, the direct clutch would be a number 1, which they stamp it with a number 1 right there. And then the forward clutch would be a number 2. This would be common for a 5-disc setup. The forward clutch is going to be a little thicker because it's a little deeper. I don't know why they made it deeper. Don't ask me, you'd have to ask a GM engineer. I assume that they made it deeper to accommodate the wavy spring that was always, or not the wavy spring, the wavy steel, which acts as a spring in the forward clutch. And the reason they put these in a lot of forward clutches is just simply because when you wanted to shift from park to drive or neutral to drive, you don't want a big thud. It's not considered a driving clutch in a driving application. Stuff like Derby and stuff like that, it becomes a shifting clutch, so we don't worry about that. A lot of my performance transmissions, I don't use this either. So there we go. Now, if you have a mid-70s 375, then you're going to have things that have a 4-disc clutch instead of a 5. And you'll have a number 3 in the direct, and you'll have a number 4 in the forward clutch. Just a little thicker ring, they interchange. Now, if you run a 6-disc setup, you might get one of these rare ones that are a 0. If you run one and you run across stamped steel pistons in, like, let's say a mid-80s Chevy 4x4 transmission, you're going to get this goofy thing. And it's going to have a big crown steel, which is usually busted to shit. It's just basically a giant belled thrust washer. And then it'll have a wavy on top of that. And you can shit can all of that and put in something like that, or leave that and put in steels, but you really don't want to leave that because it's going to hang up on the edge of the drum, like I kind of mentioned in the other video. So you're going to want to get a thicker ring at the very least. One thing you can do, if you don't have any other options, and these are common, you can go through and tack weld every other corner to ridge it up the piston to keep it from bending, and that'll help save that. Okay, there's your stamped steel options. Now, the other options that we got here, which are the more desirable, but you're getting hard to find, is your aluminum pistons. These are very common, anywhere from 1964 all the way till the mid-70s. Somewhere around 75, somewhere between 74 and 76, depending on the transmission, these disappeared. And the same application applies to the rings on these. You can get mid-70s transmissions. They might have that. They might have these. They might have 1-in-1. You don't know, because most of these have been into it by somebody, and all the transmission builders knew that these were desirable. But if you get a virgin transmission out of a tuna boat, more than likely it's going to be a long tail, and it's going to have a check ball piston in the direct clutch and a non-check ball thicker piston in the forward clutch. And this is what you're looking for. These are the ones you want if you're going to build something. If you can't get away from it, This is not bad. There's also other options I'm going to show you. But here, there's a check ball right here that I was telling you about that you have to have for the older drum. You might hear it. This one has no check ball and is thicker. They also did 6-disc versions of this with check ball. Here's an example of one where somebody took, they were running out of parts, and they put a set screw in here because they only wanted one check ball. Like I said before, you can have multiple check balls. You got to have at least one, either in the drum or in the piston or both. 2 check balls ain't going to kill you. Some people think you only need one at all costs. So what happened here is the guy had machined down the outside of the piston, put a set screw in here, and used a check ball drum, probably a later model 4L80E drum, which had check balls. Now, most of your mid-80s, and I'm just because I don't have one here, your mid-80s Chevy transmissions went to a piston that looks very similar to this. It'll look like this on the outside, very thin, but it'll have the spring retainers on the inside. And it's arguable you might be better off welding up one of these than have one of them mid-80s pistons. I haven't had very much luck with it. As a rule of thumb, you always want to put some kind of an aluminum piston in the direct clutch. You can get away with a stamped steel piston in the forward, but you want to put an aluminum piston in the direct clutch. I don't know if I've said that earlier in the video or not, but I can't reinforce that enough. It's actually this one. This would be the ideal one to put in your direct clutch to keep that from breaking. Alright, follow me on that? Probably not. What that piston actually is, that I was using to illustrate a mid-80s Chevrolet 4x4 transmission piston, is actually out of a 4L80E. And that spring, this is what they look like getting them used. That spring will look like this. It's a cage spring. They're not independent springs. We'll show you what the normal springs look like in another video. Sits on top there. Can you use that in a 400, even though it's a late model 4L80E? Damn right you can. But you got to watch your clutch pack. You got to make sure that your steels ain't going to hook the bottom and then jam up the pack so it won't move. And in the other video I also showed you this. Here's a molded piston where the seals don't sit separate. They're all actually molded all the way into it, one piece. They don't blow out quite as easy. I'm trying this on some of my prototypes, and some of my good customers are trying this out. It's not a cheap option to go to. I've had really good luck with this. I honestly believe that one of my friends just won the Derby 2 weeks ago solely because of that. But that's my opinion. Clutch discs. This is a common waffle clutch. This is a metallic Raybestos clutch, very common. You can reuse these. These last a lot, but they give you a lot of metallic into the oil. And I'm not a big fan of them because they contaminate the oil so bad. They last a long time, but they'll burn the shit out of your steels. Here's an example. I don't know if you can see it, that rippling effect in the light. This is water contamination. This is what happens when the water gets in there. Now, if you tear any transmission apart that ever had water in it, this is where it's going to attack, on all your clutch linings. You see that? That gets shit canned. Now here, this is a discolored disc, but you can, I don't know, you can kind of see it there or not. It still has some writing and some markings on it. This wouldn't be terrible to use as long as it meets about 78 to 80 thousandths. If you're in a pinch. Now, there's several different, I like to reuse a standard Borg Warner. This is what I use religiously. I've had the best luck with this. I've done the Raybestos linings. I've done a lot of Alto linings. I've done the Alto Reds, the Raybestos Hard, the Raybestos Blues, which are ungodly expensive, and to be honest with you, I don't think it's worth it. You know, you name it, I've tried it. This is the one that I have the best luck for, the most bang for the buck. Now, if I get into a racing application, and I know, I mean, I would probably either use an Ultra Red or just even a risk of Borg Warner. If I was going to do something for a dump truck, I'd probably go back to this. Now, I've got derby guys that love this, but then they run a filter, an auxiliary filter in their cooler line, and you'll pull nothing but metallic sheen out there. It contaminates the oil bad. That's why I quit using them, because they just contaminate the oil so damn bad. So. Alright, is there anything else I can tell you on this segment? Well, probably not. Thanks for watching.